Hi, this time I wanted to talk about improvisation and motivation in solo role playing games because I think that both motivation and improvisation they are quite linked together. One thing leads to another sometimes. Let's start by talking about a general overview of improvisation. I think this is going to be very useful for those that are still getting the hang of solo role playing games or that are thinking about trying it just to see if it's their thing. When it comes to improvisation, you really need to let your subconscious mind flow. All of those sometimes crazy or unexpected thoughts to just come out and start to build the adventure itself. All of those game master emulators and tables and any tools that you employ during your solo RPG session, they are just there to keep the wheels going, the wheels turning. They are just there to get you unstuck. Most of the intellectual effort should be handled or carried out by your mind. You could be thinking that it's somewhat difficult to surprise yourself, but we do that all the time. Not only with random thoughts that just pop out in our heads, but also when, for example, when you are dreaming, when you are sleeping and you're having those dreams and perhaps nightmares sometimes, you are facing the unexpected, and all of that is created by your mind. You could go deeper into that subject, but it's all based on your own thoughts on that layer that is just underneath everything else. So you have to achieve that state when you are playing solo role playing games. How can you surprise yourself? Just let your mind flow, like when you were little and perhaps you wanted to try out those action figures, but you couldn't go to your friend's house, so you had to play by yourself. You were creating all of those scenarios. Maybe some of you didn't play with action figures when they were little, but I think most of us we had that skill, that talent to come up with those scenarios that surprised ourselves. That we started to paint a clear picture of what we wanted. So when you are playing a solo RPG session, just allow your mind to see if you can spontaneously, unexpectedly set up the first scene, the first encounter. So maybe you are playing a Wild West or Old West sort of game. If the first image that comes to your mind is the your character, the cowboy or any character that you are playing as, sitting at the bar, enjoying your favorite drink, and you suddenly hear some violent crash just outside the bar, go with it. If you want to make some rolls as a sort of support rather than the main body of the adventure or the encounter, then make those rolls. But just let your mind guide the entire action, the entire course of events. Just keep on thinking about those scenarios. So maybe you step outside and your mind immediately, just out of nowhere, goes towards something related to Call of Cthulhu. So now you are playing a Wild West with Call of Cthulhu or Mythos style of adventure. So bring out those tables with all sorts of weird elements and cosmic horror and all of that. But maybe your mind went elsewhere. Maybe it was quite mundane. You go out and you see that someone is being attacked. Maybe your character is a lawman, or maybe you're just passing through, but you still want to see if you can gain some profit from the situation. Maybe you are quite opportunistic like that. And just make those rolls when you feel like you are stuck. Or maybe, for example, you are playing a steampunk adventure, and the first thought that comes to your mind is that your character is a sort of detective, a private eye, and you're sitting in your office and suddenly someone knocks at the door. It could be quite stereotypical. Maybe it's the typical mysterious woman that is interested in hiring you, but maybe it's something else, something completely different. Maybe there's an alien outside, or maybe you open the door and there's no one there. Maybe it turns into a sort of supernatural adventure. And it is in those moments where you are letting your mind dictate the flow of things. If your mind suddenly stops and you cannot think of anything, then you rely on your random tables and your emulators and all of that. It's just to keep things going, to put some grease on the gears of your mind so that you start once again letting your mind take control of the flow of things, surprising yourself. You can roll for many things, of course, to determine different hazards, perhaps traps if it's that sort of game, different random encounters with all sorts of non-player characters. But just let your mind take control of things and use everything else as a tool, as an auxiliary element. And how does this tie in or relate with motivation? I think that as long as you are motivated with the adventure that you are running, this flow of your mind, this subconscious downpour, or how would you call it, just like a constant stream of surprising thoughts, will come quite natural, quite easily. And in order for you to get motivated, you need to examine what you expect of a particular adventure. So just think of the fascinating things that you experienced when you first played role-playing games. I remember when I first started to get into role-playing games, I think that the most magical moment was when I played as a game master, or a dungeon master specifically, because I started with Advanced Dungeons and Dragons. I started to see this, like I referred to it as a pocket dimension, even though back then I didn't have the concept until much later on. But there was this miniature, or rather like a glimpse into another world, a fictional, imaginary world. You could travel to that world and go back to your everyday life. But when I saw that world and I saw my players going through different situations, camping, tiptoeing through very dangerous environments, having some really savage fights, all of that just fascinated me so much. So you need to identify those elements of role-playing games that just puts that, it's like a gut feeling, like you feel so excited about trying a particular role-playing game or a campaign setting. Probably a lot of you also experience this sort of mental exercise, although it doesn't feel like exercise, because exercise also is associated with effort. But in my case, whenever I am relaxing in some way, maybe I'm listening to music, maybe I'm just lying down, like taking a break. Maybe you're anywhere. Maybe you're in the toilet or any place, where you're like just relaxing. Sometimes I start to imagine, oh, it would be so awesome if I had the time to play this role-playing game, or oh, it would be so cool if my group actually liked this sort of genre or RPG. And then I start to create these RPG scenarios in my mind, and I feel this excitement. Even though I am not playing, I actually feel as if I am already planning a campaign, and I start to run through the initial encounters. And this has actually been helpful for me when I actually get to play some role-playing games, and that I was just like considering them as wishful thinking or daydreams of sorts. Of course, you won't be daydreaming these RPG scenarios when you are doing something that requires concentration, right? Like, for example, driving. Don't do that while driving, or when doing some sort of physical activity, sports, and all of that. But when you are relaxed and you start to feel and create those imaginary scenarios related to RPGs, when you actually get to play that role-playing game, it's like you had practiced before. In martial arts, yes, in martial arts terms, I would relate it somewhat to kata, or the martial arts forms and routines. Once you are in a physical match or confrontation, you're not going to be using the kata or the routines in that set way. They're like floating tools that you will add to your natural fighting style. And it happens in the same way with role-playing games. When you are creating those imaginary scenarios during your leisure time, and when you actually get to play the RPG with your players, with your group, then you maybe things won't proceed exactly as you imagine them, but you have those mental tools, those fragments of your mind, and you use them whenever they are necessary, and it all clicks. It's like you are gathering the pieces of a puzzle, and then you build that puzzle once the game starts. So you need to take that concept, in my opinion, you need to take it and insert it into solo RPGs, because now things can actually proceed somewhat similar to what you planned. There will be randomness, unexpected things, not only because of your own immediate ideas during that moment, during that instant. It's also related to the results that you generate when you are using your random tables and emulators and all of that. So if you can actually get into that mindset that you're actually taking that fantasy and putting it into reality, I think you are going to enjoy, or rather that fictional reality, you're going to enjoy solo RPGs a lot more. So now you have your motivation, you have pinpointed or identified those things that you enjoy so much about RPGs. Maybe some of you love investigations. Then let the next course or path that your adventure is taking during a solo session, let it be focused completely on investigations and with just a bit of other situations. But maybe you actually don't like investigations. You're more like a kick in the door style player. Maybe you like those first person shooters like Quake and Doom and all of that. If you're playing an RPG that is focused on that, or that has the elements to recreate that experience, focus the entire adventure in that direction. And every now and then just perhaps insert some other random elements just to add some spice or variety to the entire thing. So in that way, your motivation, the things that you enjoy of an adventure, like I said, maybe you like the journeys and travel aspect, or maybe you like diplomacy or political intrigue, all of that is going to motivate you to improvise a lot more. And only every now and then you're going to make some rolls with your tables, with your favorite emulators, just to keep things going, to introduce some randomness, because a lot of the different emulators and tables, they do introduce those unexpected elements, like the chaos factor in Mythic. Sometimes the yes or no question is going to unleash a lot more. And so I just wanted to share those tips or advice that have helped me with solo RPGs. Remember, all of those tools are just there to keep things going, to get you unstuck, or to ease your mind into improvising things quickly. Maybe a lot of people could feel that solo RPGs are not for them because they get stuck, they do not know how to proceed, they do not know what to do. So now, not only do they have those random tables and emulators, they also have that motivation that makes it so easy for your mind to improvise the adventure in many ways, in all sorts of unexpected forms and pathways and all of that. Well, I hope you found these tips interesting. I also recommend, or I ask that you also write down your own tips and advice on how to keep things going, how to improvise, how to motivate yourself into playing solo RPGs. Please let us know in the comment section below. Thank you so much for watching this video, and thanks again for supporting this channel by sending drive-thru RPG gift certificates. If anyone else wants to further support the channel, the information how to do that will be in the description below. Once again, thank you and see you later.